Gary, do you want to get us started here?
Yeah, what about, is Tom there and John? I haven't seen them. Are they there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay, I didn't see your pictures flash up, so that's why I was holding off a little bit. Sure, I'd like to start the meeting today. I'll need to be over by 10 o'clock because there's some other people that need to be on Zoom, so I'll keep an eye on it and let me know if I go by, Eric, that so we can close her up at 10 o'clock. I'd like to let the committee know that at the last town board meeting, the short-term rentals, proposal was accepted by the town. So that's on the books now, if you will, once we get the approval through the state. And on this January 11th town board meeting, the swimming pools for the RLD is going to be brought up for the public hearing and everything before the town board. And that's the things that I had to report back to you on. I'll turn it over to Eric now so we can start through the different items that are on the agenda today, unless somebody has something they want to, talk about before we get into the regular meeting. Okay, Eric. You for,
Okay, sorry. All right, so we chose to discuss a couple things today. We're going to start with the neighborhood commercial draft, which we had left off on last month, and then talk about permeable pavers and also the ECB's request to review the zoning in the RLD for like the East Lake portion. So let me share my screen. Pull up the neighborhood commercial draft. So last time, some people had an issue with seeing the red line changes. Did it come through for everybody after I sent the email as a PDF?
I got it.
Yeah, I got the December 23rd one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, unless you guys want me to go through all the proposed changes here, do you guys have any comments on this as it's written?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
First one is paragraph B, bullet 12 that was eliminated.
Right.
Why?
Because we added, if you look down at 16 and 17, we added residential uses as an allowable use in that district.
Okay, so you think that adding 16 and 17 eliminates the need for 12?
Yes.
So if someone were to want to expand their residence, as long as they met with the requirements, they're able to do that, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
It'd be the same as if it was in the AR2 or something like that, where single family dwellings are an allowable use. They can expand upon them as long as they meet the zoning requirements.
Okay. Paragraph C. So I noticed earlier in this article that we allow accessory structures and actually encourage accessory structures based on the bullet I see from the comment. Why do we then go and define what the permitted uses of the accessory structure are? And the reason I ask this is because I believe we can't even fathom to imagine what people would want to use the accessory structures for.
Yeah.
And we in my reading of it, we almost kind of limit it to garages or maybe warehouses or gas stations. And I think that there could be many more uses for an accessory structure than the ones we have listed.
Okay. Where do you said that there was a part in this that talks about accessory buildings like prior to that?
Yes, I believe there is. Um, So, well, it says that I misread that. It says that we encourage more than one principal building,
Oh, right.
and that's in paragraph
Yeah,
B on the first page.
Yeah, it's that's a good point. I'm curious, I'm trying to think of a way to potentially work some language in here, given that there's such a wide variety of uses.
Why couldn't we just say something like an accessory structure to support the principal use of the principal building, or something to that effect?
Wasn't that what 2 says? It says used in conjunction with a permitted principal use.
It kind of specifies it more to the effect of either storage or garages,
Right.
which might not be the case with some of these.
Well, it says store any vehicles, equipment, or materials on the premises. The materials, to me, covers just about everything under the sun.
What if it's a support building for the operations? I just think that why limit it? You know, commercial and retail are in the midst of changing pretty dramatically, and why not just say an accessory structure that supports the use of the principal building?
Well, isn't that what 2 says?
I think it could be argued otherwise, Terry.
Well, instead of saying in conjunction with, if you said which are used in support of a permitted principal use.
Okay. Why do we need to even clarify it with the garages and storage buildings and storage for vehicles and equipment?
Well, it's just showing an example.
So if this said something like,
garage and storage
So then-
building.
If that's true, Terry, why don't we flip the sentence to say, for uses which are used to support the permitted principal use, such as garages, storage buildings, storing vehicles, equipment, materials, etc.
That sounds good.
Works, yeah.
okay. Does everybody else agree with that change?
Sure.
I'm curious what Kathy would say. So with the not having a lawyer in our group today maybe limits us. I'm not sure if we're better off having more explanation and examples or less. I'm after she gave us a little background last time she was with us on another issue. I totally am on board with what John is saying, but I don't know if trying to give good examples, can hurt us later on or help us. I guess I look to the rest of you for some guidance on this.
Well, she would certainly have a chance to chime in on this when it comes before the town board, so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, by doing what you're proposing there, does it then open it up to allow accessory residential since you're using examples instead of defining what the accessory use is, and do you want to allow that?
Oh, we don't want to allow residential, no. I wouldn't think.
So you may have made
Oh.
it too broad.
I believe in response to that, Doug, there's an article here that says that if you're going to do a residential dwelling, that it needs to conform with the requirements of the structure.
Right, but if you have a piece of property that has an accessory building on it and you're broadening it, so you've got the one main building that's for instance, a commercial building that may have a secondary building on it, can that then be rented out for residential purposes? Do you want to allow that?
I think that the way the code is written, it would currently allow that. And that kind of gets back to this part right here on the first page, part B. It can have more than one principal building erected on it where the uses are permitted by the underlying zoning. So, and with the changes in the neighborhood commercial that are shown here, including adding single family dwellings as a permitted principal use, they could have multiple principal buildings on it, including, a second single family dwelling.
What's the definition of accessory building? I mean, that,
I'll pull it up here, but it's used in support of and subordinate to the principal building or the principal use.
Let me ask for a point of information. On the ZBA, we were involved with a variance regarding, I think it was neighborhood commercial, the house and supporting structures out by the racetrack. Do you remember that? Either?
Well, yeah, that was it was like a detached garage essentially.
Yeah. Now, wasn't that neighborhood commercial?
No, that was industrial, but he had a pre-existing residential use.
I got it. Okay.
Can everybody read the definition of accessory building that I have up here?
yeah.
Let's try to see if there's. Okay, and there's a definition of accessory use just below too.
Contributes to.
Oh, sorry.
Well, wasn't there at one time, I'm trying to flash back on when I was on the zoning board way back, that on an accessory building, you only allowed certain utilities?
If you're probably thinking of, it's 229B, which regulates accessory buildings for single family dwellings, which says that you can only have certain utilities. So if it was not related to a single family dwelling, then they would be subject to that requirement.
So can that phrase serving a purpose customarily incidental to the use of the principal building be interpreted to be somebody living in that structure and working in that, let's say, retail store? I mean, if so, then that could be an issue.
I would doubt that if you were interpreting a retail space that, residential would be customarily incidental to it. And, if the person enforcing the zoning rules would probably say, no, that would not be an accessory use. They could take it to the zoning board for an interpretation, but I would think that that's how that would be interpreted.
So Eric, does that then mean that Doug's question would be rendered moot then, or?
Well, I think, again, the way that the code is written right now, it would kind of already be moot because you're allowed to have more than one principal, or if this code were passed as written, you would be allowed to have more than one principal building. So you could have a woodworking shop as one building, and then, maybe you have a detached building on the same lot that, because single family dwellings are also a principally permitted use, you could then use that as a residential space as well. So, whether or not you could add an accessory dwelling unit is kind of moot because you can have a principal dwelling unit.
But what's to keep me with the revision and broadening the accessory? What's to keep me from purchasing a shed, one of these nicer ones that gets delivered to my house and then renting it out in my backyard? That would be an accessory unit, even if I had a single family dwelling already on it.
Yeah, probably the regulations on single family dwellings, like as far as both, let's say building code. Also, what is a single family dwelling? So it's got to have those 5 factors: the space for living, eating, sleeping, sanitation. And then also our code has that 1,100 square foot requirement as well.
No, I get all that from a building side of building codes
Okay.
aspect, but let's hypothetically say I have a unit that meets building code that I'm having delivered. Do you want to allow that? Because what you're talking about is an accessory unit. An accessory unit could be theoretically brought in, and I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying, is that what we want to allow?
Mhm.
Could be delivered to the property and then used in that capacity. Is that what you want to allow?
To that point, Doug, I think that's probably correct that would be allowed under the code as it's written right now. Whether or not it's something you guys want, I'll leave it up to you guys.
Where is the neighborhood commercial?
Cheshire.
That's
pretty
it,
much.
huh?
And it's not even the entirety of Cheshire. I'll pull up the map right now. It's pretty much just where the roads intersect between, it's like between Woolhouse and Goodale and Keister.
Which is the reasoning for changing the zoning schedule, I guess, being that the lot areas were all 1 acre before. Now you've taken it down to something more applicable to Cheshire.
So this kind of burnt orange area is the neighborhood commercial.
Just that goldish color area?
Yep. And then there's a portion up, it's Mummerose.
Up on North Road, right? Mum Road?
Yeah, sorry. But it's just this 1 or 2 parcels right there, which, if the town passes its form-based code zoning district, that would be eliminated.
So this really has very limited application.
And if you want to apply it to a single lot, it's probably that lot behind the community store or the country store.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. So is that allowed to expand in the property, Eric,
The zoning district boundaries?
for the neighborhood? Yes. Some of those
Um,
other gray ones there, can they join into that neighborhood if they want to?
Petition.
They could petition the town board to be rezoned like that, or if the town board felt it was appropriate and they wanted to proactively do it, they could modify the boundaries.
In what district's the dark gray?
R130,
R130, all residential.
which is probably also not a great district for Cheshire, given that, again, a lot of these ones don't have 115 feet a lot width. They don't meet the 60-foot requirement or 30,000 square feet.
That was going to be my question, whether we wanted to change the lot size and the lot width, or don't we care? Let them go for a variance.
I believe at some point it would be a good idea to look at the zoning of Cheshire as a whole.
I agree.
Well, on those lots, I don't think there's enough room. If, I'm just trying to think, look at it in my mind, those different properties. They don't have enough space to put anything on, let alone accessory structure, do they? Other than the
Probably
company
not.
store.
Yeah, the company store is probably the big one that does. This one's the parking lot or the storage area owned by the town. This is the water station owned by the town. There's A's, and A's actually has 2 buildings on it right now. They really couldn't add anything else because I think both their septic systems are back here. Certainly the Grange and that building just south of it, there's no space on it. And Fingers Upholstery doesn't have more space. Let's see, this is the mini mall there. There's not really any space there with their septic system that's in the back. And then this one also really doesn't have much space for it either. So practically speaking, right now, it's just this parcel owned by Ben Green in the company store.
I remember a few years ago, the owner came forward with a plan to put in some storage areas and office space in that area out behind the company store. But plan wasn't acceptable for a number of reasons. That kind of went away.
Yeah.
Again, talking about very limited application of this code.
For now,
Well,
unless you expand the neighborhood commercial to include some of these other lots at some point in the future, but they'd be doing it sort of back asswards.
I think that at some point it would be beneficial to explore adding neighborhood commercial districts throughout the town, which is in line with what its purpose is. I'm trying to think. This district shall be located to be as generally distributed throughout the town in proportion to population and shall be limited in size and proximity. They're intended to attract pedestrian customers from surrounding residential development. So again, they're certainly not distributed throughout the town. So I think it was intended to be, that there would be small commercial spaces near neighborhoods, but there really isn't. And I think that from a planning perspective, it would be a good idea to have that.
Where might another location be? I'm kind of at a loss within the town.
Well, initially, I believe there was some like neighborhood commercial space in Centerfield. There probably wouldn't need to be anything in this area, since that will likely all be rezoned. Any of the places where we've talked about there being like mixed use areas, my neighborhood commercial district, potentially down here, but again, this is all in the MUO area. Yeah. And then, any place where you have large neighborhoods, which kind of singles out maybe this area, or along Middle Cheshire Road somewhere, again, where there's a lot of maybe pedestrian traffic. So right now you already have pedestrian amenities kind of on this section of Middle Cheshire Road. You also have your neighborhood, so it's generally distributed throughout the town in proportion to the population. Maybe this area, I don't know. But from a broad view, that's probably what I would look at. And I think it also supports the the Middle Cheshire Road corridor study that the town is going through right now, trying to promote walkability and bikeability. Part of that is providing places for people to walk and bike to. So.
But I think with the pandemic, it's changed a lot of outlook on, the future of how construction will take place and what the construction will be.
Yeah, I would question whether people in some of these areas would like a semi-commercial district plopped down in the middle of them. Like right across the street from where you live, Bob.
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah, I think
then
initially,
let's not get ahead of ourselves.
yeah, initially, you're right, there'd be a resistance. So there would have to be a selling job, which isn't impossible.
And, that was just kind of my personal opinion. Obviously, to do something like that, it would have to be supported by the comprehensive plan, certainly, and probably some other sort of plan or study to figure out where, if it were to be expanded, that would be. But since we're not talking about expanding it right now, you guys can save that for another day.
And if we did go and expand the geography of the neighborhood commercial, we could revisit the ordinance at the same time to clarify what we wanted in some of these potential areas.
Yep.
Yeah, there's certainly no area that cries out for another neighborhood commercial at this point. And if they want to put a mini mart across from Bob, they can apply for a zone variance.
Way to wake me up. That certainly will wake me up.
Bob's General Store.
Exactly.
Now we need a Wawa.
Well, place the cattle with a store, Bob.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe a truck stop. That's a great idea.
So Eric, in practicality, all these lots in Cheshire are non-conforming, obviously, because the extreme lot dimensions of 1 acre for requirements for, so they're all non-conforming. So anytime they do anything there currently, they have to get a relief from the ZBA. And I guess if we're going to apply the new regulations that you're proposing in terms of lot size and width and all that, then would they become more conforming, or they still remain non-conforming because they can't meet these dimensions either?
Yeah. So I did this little chart a while back when we first proposed this. So these are all the tax maps or tax IDs for the parcels included in the neighborhood commercial zoning district. You'll see their acreages right here and the frontage or approximate frontage right here. The ones that are conforming right now are kind of noted in green. So again, this one is the Cheshire store.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I can't remember which one that one is.
Sure.
So under this proposal, all these ones in blue would then be conforming.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still a couple that wouldn't be. Bob Finger has a 100th acre lot. That's not conforming, but quite a few of the other ones do end up conforming or more conforming.
Okay.
Where is that 100th acre lot? Just adjacent to Bob Finger's house? What the hell is that?
It's that right there where the mouse is. There used to be a really small building or shop there, and it got torn down, I don't know, 20 years ago maybe.
Well,
Yeah.
why doesn't he combine those lots?
I don't know. Because he can, I don't know, he can build on it, theoretically.
What, a doghouse?
It has to be a small dog.
Put a bowling lane in.
No, it's not big enough for a bowling lane.
One lane?
But you know, one of the things that make Cheshire unique, when we're on the ZBA, we're always looking at the character of the neighborhood. In my mind, it's hard to describe the character of the general neighborhood of Cheshire. I can't really get a handle on it personally.
Well, it's a hamlet. I guess that's the
Yeah.
best description.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the committee want to do on this, on the neighborhood commercial?
Wait, did we ever answer Doug's question there as far as, you know, whether you would want a accessory dwelling unit on like a commercial site or something like that?
I'm not in favor of it.
I mean, we're talking about so few parcels. I just, and if come somebody wants one, let them go to the zoning board. This is a minuscule issue, in my opinion.
So, let's say for practical purposes, the Cheshire store is the only one that this might apply to. If the Cheshire store wanted to build, you know, a single family dwelling and it was at least 1,100 square feet and met all the code requirements in, you know, that green portion of their lot.
God bless them.
Yeah.
You okay with that?
Could they subdivide it to do the same thing?
Sure. I mean, it's, again, they would have to meet, you know, the lot width requirements and acreage and stuff like that, but sure.
But even if they did and they plunked down 2 or 3 houses, if that was passable, it really wouldn't look any different than the rest of Cheshire.
Nope.
From a, you know, continuity perspective, it would be quite similar.
Yeah, the neighborhood character. That's what I was getting at. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd let it go.
Okay.
I second that.
What other questions do you guys have on this one?
You don't think that we're going to expand in the town and create more of these neighborhood commercial zones? Then I think it is minuscule. If it looks like there's potential, we could have more of this, then maybe we need to address, you know, Doug's concerns. That's the way it hits me.
I don't see any at this point. Again, go ahead.
Do you want to leave it alone the way it is right at the present time without making any changes at all?
Yeah, I sort of look at it, either you make the changes and then you go out and consider what areas could the neighborhood commercial could be expanded on, or you wait till if there are other areas you want to expand to, then come back to the regulations and see how they could be fit into those particular properties. I think it might be premature to do anything right now.
Why are we looking at this in the first place? There are so many other places in town where the lot sizes or the setbacks don't comply either.
Truthfully, this has been on our docket for like 2 years. I can't remember exactly why it came up, but 2 years ago is something that I think we were kind of like looking for. At that point, we were looking for more stuff to do, and I thought that this was an appropriate thing to take on because of how non-conforming those lots were with the district regulations, and that if it would encourage some, you know, development in that portion of Cheshire, that it might kind of spur a little revitalization of Cheshire.
Oh, I can see that. Yep.
So this really wasn't a concern of the zoning or the planning committee having the, you know, things put before them that didn't have stuff to work with. Is that the case?
Right. I mean, I don't think that we've seen any variances for these ones. Not in my time.
Yeah, the last one was when the Brundage
Yeah.
family there wanted to expand, and that didn't go anywhere.
And that's under previous owners now, right?
Yeah, that's changed hands.
So, again, what's the committee want to just leave this the way it is at the present time
For,
and let the planning and zoning board, take any action if there's any action needed to be taken coming up?
Why don't we just, I mean, is there objections to the proposed local law? I mean, why, if we've already gotten this drafted and we can finalize it through just the remainder of the process here, why wait?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any harm in that, but we've already spent way too much time on it.
Second that.
I think there was a motion in a second.
Yeah, okay. I'll
This
take
is
a
to-
motion, on what the committee decides that they want to have done with this.
Wait, so the motion is to what, move it forward or?
Yeah, let's get it over with.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any more discussion? Now we'll vote on it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no.
no,
Carried.
Can't
Chuck said no.
imagine anybody will even show up for the public hearing.
Okay, Eric, we move on to the next item on the agenda.
Sure. This, I think, was just more of a general discussion. And you want to do the permeable pavers then?
Right.
So this was, this has been a recommendation of the zoning board, I believe. So if you guys, John, Bob, want to introduce it to us and we'll talk about it.
I will speak on this. I think that the information that I believe was Chuck sent around to everybody about porous pavement speaks well to this issue. I'll also note that the Environmental Conservation Board has recommended the use of permeable pavers on many properties that have come before the zoning board that have lot coverage issues. And in fact, the zoning board at our last meeting mandated that a property with lot coverage in excess of what was allowed change their driveway and I believe sidewalks to permeable pavers as a condition of approval, which I think in my mind sets a precedent that could be challenged at some point later on. But that, I think it's time that we consider the use of permeable pavers an asset to the community. And I'm going to take it one step further. 2 zoning board meetings ago, I was informed by a property that was going for approvals with lot coverage in excess of what was allowed, in part because gravel driveways are considered a structure and considered part of lot coverage. And how we do that, how we consider a permeable natural product like a gravel driveway part of lot coverage is beyond my comprehension.
Good comment, John.
Yeah.
What the sad part about it, and it mentioned it in Chuck's, what Chuck sent around this morning, is the issue of maintenance. And it makes me crazy when I think about the caddy dealer where we made Rocco and Randy jump through hoops with all that exotic drainage underneath the parking lot. And then the next year they sealed the goddamn thing up.
Yeah, I don't think that we can legislate though, Tom, for
Maintenance,
every
yeah.
ridiculous act that a person might perform on their own property after the fact.
Right, that's a sad problem. Somebody that puts in the permeable pavers, they just somehow emphasize the need for having them vacuumed so they don't get clogged up. And that the drainage design underneath actually functions. I think they're a wonderful product.
I think,
Yeah,
I think, I
if
think you
they're
can get,
maintained.
I
Yeah.
think you can
Right.
get around that maintenance issue a little bit, because I know if the system, the permeable system is part of their stormwater management plan, the town requires that they have a way to maintain that system in the future. And part of the maintenance requirement could be that the porosity would have to be continued and maintained in the future. Now that obviously would apply to a commercial property, but maybe not the same to a residential property.
Well, that's it. You can't police somebody on the Westlake Road who's got
But
no
but in the
idea.
case of Farnsworth, there was a case, it was part of his stormwater management system.
Yeah.
And maybe that was before we had the stormwater maintenance agreements in place under the MS4 program, but that should have been covered under that agreement, that it would not be made impervious.
I guess,
I'm not,
go ahead, Gary.
I'm not against, the paving, but I looked at, different information on the internet over the last week or so on it. One thing that is, like you indicated before, is that it needs to be maintained in order to be, beneficial. But one question that popped in my mind was, what about if somebody puts in this type of paving and all of a sudden it starts to deteriorate, and they decide to rip it out and go with an asphalt driveway or a concrete driveway? How does that affect the lot coverage?
Can I touch on the one thing before? Since this is in the RLD, I think we should try to avoid consideration of like commercial uses, kind of like Farnsworth. It's an interesting one, but for practical reasons, it's going to be a situation where we don't have a stormwater maintenance agreement unless they disturb.
Yeah, it's going to be a small lot. They're going to be
guess-
small lots. Yeah.
I would say at the ZBA, you get to a point where there may be negotiation. We don't want to necessarily say no if the other side, is close and they want to, and so we go a little back and forth. If they say the right things regarding the environment, that's a plus, and that helps them in the back and forth. And certainly the porous pavers make sense. But at the end of the day, the lot coverage doesn't change no matter what kind of driveway it is. It doesn't change. And I don't know what to say or do about that and whether it should. Obviously, you take people as a leap of faith that they're going to install this, maintain it properly, and we all live happily ever after. Whether we can monitor that and all that, it's in my mind, it's doubtful. But at least going in with good
intentions.
good faith, I think the porous pavers and all that make a lot of sense. Anything around the lake that improves a situation, we're somewhat receptive on the ZBA. And John, if you disagree, certainly jump in. But I'm wondering if there ought to be an incentive where there's something they gain with lot coverage, because that's a big deal with a lot of these. And I don't understand the gravel, and I don't understand, a driveway is a driveway, but it isn't, because you could just do the firm up the soil and create big ruts and all that, but you'd be okay. And you wouldn't have, and you'd be okay in terms of on paper, and you'd have something really crappy with ruts in your driveway. So I think that we've got to, I think we're sending out mixed messages to developers on this issue.
I agree wholeheartedly, Bob.
Well,
I
the
just wanna
issue
touch
of
on-
porous pavement, pavers and all that is they're a good addition. The real question is, how do you maintain it? You know, how do you ensure that the property owner maintains it so that a problem isn't created?
How
I
do you
mean,
write it
in
into
and
the
of
code?
themselves, reading through the email that Chuck sent out earlier this morning, there's quite a bit that has to be done in order to, properly install, a permeable pavement driveway. And I don't know if that is something that needs to go into our design standards in order to make sure that it's done properly, that it's reviewed by the code guys, the code enforcement officers, but going forward, I mean, is it possible to, condition an approval or, that, you properly maintain this? Not that we're going to go out and measure permeability on an annual basis, but that, if a problem does come about in the future, the town would have some ability to go back and say to the property owner, look, you had agreed to maintain this and you didn't. So therefore, whatever, I don't know what the whatever is, but.
Yeah, Terry, I think that the zoning board, it's not necessarily a leap of faith. I mean, they have and can conditioned their approvals on permeable pavement being installed. And so if in the future somebody did go out and tear up the driveway, which probably would require a site development permit anyways, but say they just sealed it, that would violate the condition of approval, and their variance for that would technically be void. So there is some enforcement mechanism for that, if it was conditioned like that.
And that particular application comes before the planning board next week, and we will double up on that to make sure that that area is in fact constructed with porous pavement. And I think goes so far as require a note in the plan to that effect, that it be installed and maintained.
We have, Chuck, I was reading through that email you sent this morning, and there, there was, not design standards in itself, but it did reference, a certain depth of permeable soil and, gravel at a certain depth and all. Do we have, I mean, do any of you guys know if when these systems are installed, are they done in that manner, or is it just someone plopping down some porous blocks on top of a? I don't know.
I don't think a whole lot of effort is put into the construction. I knew the design, you have to come up sort of with what is the infiltration rate that you're getting from this system, given the type of structure you're using, whether it's the grids or the actual blocks themselves. And then you got to make sure that it's constructed properly, that you have the proper sub base underneath it. It's the right thickness. You got to check your geotech underneath. Is it clay soil? I mean, is the stuff going to soak in, or is it just going to lay on the surface and eventually run off and not really serve any purpose as far as porosity? And then the maintenance, of course. And those are the items that I think, if we do come up with any type of regulations, that they all be addressed in those regulations, whether they be in the current subdivision land development regulations or in our site design standards, or in our MS4 program, that they be part of that also.
Getting back to what I was saying, I agree with what you were saying, Chuck, and thanks for what you sent out. Is there a way that we can incentivize this, or is it just something that we try to tell people for the greater good? Doing this around the lake makes sense, and you're a better neighbor, a better citizen. And when I'm saying this with incentivize, one of the big problems with pre-existing nonconformities is lot coverage, and that is a big issue. And if these people could be incentivized to do this, and do it correctly according to, we could maybe speak to some standards. Maybe this would be more successful.
Well,
Just
let's
throwing it
just,
out there.
to that point, Bob, if we take the property that came before the zoning board last week, if permeable pavers were not considered part of lot coverage, that particular house would never come before our zoning board for a rendering regardless.
That's what I was thinking, John.
You know, and that would eliminate, I don't know how many cases per year that come before the zoning board on a lot coverage issue. And generally speaking, these properties that are going for lot coverage variances, they could be remedied by the use of permeable pavers, because if you're gonna use it, you're gonna use it for your whole driveway, or you're gonna use it for your whole sidewalk.
Right.
And then it reduces that lot coverage by a couple of percent. And generally speaking, it gets the people within the threshold that we want them to be within.
Yep. That's the lot coverage is a big issue. And if these people are incentivized, it would be good. And like I said, if you want to go the opposite way, people want to build their dream house and the driveway becomes a problem, then they go with no driveway and dig up the soil with their tires. I mean, you know, that would be taking it to the absurd, but in that way, they wouldn't have to go for a variance. We have to, you know, look at this. There's a certain equilibrium that we need to find.
Well, isn't the incentive already built into the system, in that if you install it and you don't maintain it and it creates a problem, then you are violating a condition of approval and you could be required to dig it all up and redo it. I mean, there's kind of an inherent incentive built in that.
And the incentive that, you know, we tell people when they're talking to us about projects that, you know, if you're going to reach that lot coverage limit, or if you think you are, explore the use of permeable pavers, because the zoning board kind of looks favorably on it. There is your incentive that you get the variance, or you're more likely to get the variance for adding that.
And it's in their best interest to do it properly and then maintain it. So, I mean, I think you have to take their word for it, and you just drill home that better take care of it, because if this becomes an issue in the future because it wasn't maintained or because you pave over it or whatever, you will be in violation of this approval and there will be consequences. So it's in their best interest to you know, do it properly and maintain it properly.
And generally speaking, to that point, Terry, we're talking about the residential lakefront district. And generally speaking, most of those people do a pretty darn good job of maintaining their properties, because they've got a lot invested in those properties. So, you know, the only time they, generally speaking, they become unmaintained is when they have some financial difficulties and a bank comes in and takes over anyways. And that is not that frequent to begin with.
Yeah.
John, in
Now,
yours,
Go ahead, Tom.
is there some way that John or Chuck, have you seen, is there a monument or a paver that would be embossed that said, you know, continue to maintain this? I'm thinking, you know, we put monuments for underground water lines, for utility lines and so on. If there was some kind of a notice built into the construction so that the next owner knew they shouldn't seal this driveway or pave over it.
No,
You ever seen something like that?
I never have. No.
I've not. No.
We are pretty much at 10 o'clock right now.
Yeah.
Eric, a quick question. At the present time, does Dale, when he's going out and doing inspection, does he do any inspection on driveways?
You should, if it's part of the plans.
Yeah.
I have no idea, so.
Well, for something like this, wouldn't we also have to develop some kind of standard that those guys would be inspecting again? You
I
know,
would
I mean,
think so.
That's kind of why I pulled this up There is
Yeah,
a
that-
note on how it's to be constructed, at least on this project. And then if it were something that we added to the code, it's probably appropriate to put something like a design requirement. that
Yeah,
we would
I
wanna
think
see.
MRB has to help us with that too.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
permeable pavers are a good idea, so.
Yeah.
I think we're all in agree on that. Maybe an action item, Eric, could be have Lance or somebody look at what they have in their arsenal as far as details on porous pavement.
Yeah, there's got to be some minimum design standards depending on the porosity of the soil underneath.
right.
Yeah, it's a science.
Well, it's 10 o'clock. Is there anything quickly anybody wants to say before we adjourn?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Can I get a
Let's hope,
motion that we
let's
adjourn?
hope so.
I make a motion, we adjourn. Is there a
I second it.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we'll meet, the next time we'll meet will be on February 1st. And Eric will send out your notices of what we're going to be talking on. Since we didn't do the Fallbrook Park zoning, that'll be on the agenda more than likely. And anything else that Eric, has to put on it.
Okay.
So
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
everyone have a good day, and I'm sorry.
No, keep the permeable pavement in front of us too. Yep.
Right, yeah, that
Okay.
too. And
Okay.
so everybody have a good day and a happy new year to all. Thank
Thanks,
you for
Terry.
coming.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Eric.
guys.
Here.
Be safe.
Scott, thanks for that information.
That's true.